Good afternoon. So today I'll be giving you a short lecture on this chapter 12, which is international air transportation. We'll try to see what are the major points that the author states in this chapter. Now, we have seen that ocean transportation is the biggest uh, mode of transport as far as international trade is concerned. Um, though compared to ocean transportation, air freight is nominal. It's probably around 1% of the total um, freight by volume. But as far as value of freight is concerned, it's around 40% of the uh, total freight which moves because of the world trade. So you can understand, like, it hauls just 1%, but the value wise it is 40%. So that implies that um, the value of the goods is much more than it's moved by uh, water mode or in ocean liners. Now, the demand for air cargo had been uh, going through phases. Uh, in 2007, till 2007, there had been a steady growth, and the forecast was that this growth will be there. But because of the economic recession, this growth actually slowed down and it actually declined. All these researches are mostly done by Boeing. There are also some research done by Airbus. Now, if you look into table 12.1 in your book, you will see that the there are two shares over here is divided into US airlines and non-US airlines. The share of US airline had been mostly steady. There had been a very slight increase. But compared to that, non-US airlines, which will comprise of the Korean, Chinese, Singapore, um, European airlines, they had grown much faster in the last few years. Not actually in the last few years, but it's still 2007. That's what the table shows over here. Next, if you move to table 12.1, uh, excuse me, the first one was figure 12.1. Now if you take a look at table 12.1, it basically classifies the top 10 cargo airlines, and top of the list is FedEx, okay, which is followed by UPS and then Korean Airlines. If you sum up, you will see that the top 3 or 4 airlines makes a huge percentage of the total air freight. FedEx has its major hub in Memphis. If you look into table 12.2, it shows the top 10 air cargo airports. Again, in the top of the list is Memphis, which is a hub for the FedEx. It is followed by Hong Kong, Anchorage, and Shanghai. In Anchorage, again, there is a another terminal point for the FedEx, which is basically a stopover for the Trans-Pacific flight. So, as we see that, if you basically dig into the into website, into the data available or data published by Boeing, you will see that they have forecasted, say, in 2020 the demand for air freight will double. But these are all speculative data. These are based on forecasted GDP and growth in international trade. So everything again will depend. So in this slide will be, in this presentation, will cover types of service, types of aircraft, international regulations, freight tariffs, environmental issues, and security. You will see that some of them are overlapping with other modes, so you will not really need much explanation. So let me move over to the next. Types of services. Now, airmail service was the first type of cargo service offered. Um, And like many countries, US also have started with that, the airmail service. But slowly the percentage of airmail service in the total air cargo has declined, and now it's under 3% of the total airlines revenue. The other form of service is the express air service. This basically comprises of those offered by FedEx, UPS, DHL. There is one more company, that's the TNT, that's the Belgium-based company. So these are the four major express air service providers. DHL, FedEx being the biggest, they have the most number of aircrafts, 650 aircrafts, and operate in 220 countries. UPS owns 268 aircrafts. DHL, which is big in the Europe, operates in again uh, 220 countries and has got a fleet size of 350 planes. So the advantage of this express air services, they provide door-to-door service. And now most of these companies doesn't only serve as a courier company, they provide a solution for the supply chain. So that way they have basically evolved from being a mere carrier to a consultant's role, where they provide a solution. Chartered aircraft services. If there is emergency requirement, or if the size of the goods is irregular, then it has to be chartered between an origin and destination. Um, Unlike the scheduled, the chartered is always from origin to destination without any stopover. So it is much faster, but it is much more expensive. Now, leased air cargo services, freight can travel in leased aircrafts. So the leases are contracts between the owner of the aircraft and the user, and there can be different forms like the dry lease, the damp lease, the wet lease. Okay, so based on what type of contract between the aircraft provider and the user, these lease terms are. Wet lease is one of the type of lease, a lease agreement in which the owner of the aircraft provides the airplane, insurance, maintenance, fuel, and the freight crew. Now the other form would be the damp lease, which is very similar to this wet lease without the air crew. Another form of lease is the dry lease. Uh, that's a lease agreement when the owner of the aircraft provides only the plane to the lessee, who is responsible for all other cost. So the big percentage of the air cargo is by ACMI, which is basically the aircraft crew maintenance and insurance. ACMI lease is an aircraft crew maintenance and insurance lease. In such a lease agreement, the owner of the aircraft provides the airplane crew maintenance and insurance to the lessee. The lessee has to cover all other costs such as the fuel and the airport fees. Okay, so today this is the most common form of lease, and this is based on research done by Boeing in 2008 and 2009.
Type of aircrafts. Now, passenger aircraft is designed to carry passengers on the main deck of the plane, and on the hold, that's the lower part of the plane, it carry cargo. Um, there are some limitations to this, like a restriction on the size and the weight of the cargo that these planes can carry. Uh, Boeing and Airbus are the two major companies who have been making these passenger planes. Uh, the biggest passenger plane which is made by Airbus, that's the A380. So it has basically broken into the monopoly of Boeing uh, and come up with a bigger plane. Uh, the Airbus 380, which has a capacity of it varies actually. It varies from 550 to around 800 passengers on board the plane. It has a total floor area of around 5,000 square feet. So that's a huge plane. Before this, uh, the the Airbus 380 came out. It was basically the Boeing uh, 747, 757. Those were the main plane bodies available for movement of passengers. Because of the difficulty in the restriction in the size of these planes for loading cargoes, which so this figure shows that a passenger aircraft carrier carries cargo below the main deck in its belly, but the size and the type of cargo are restricted. And also sometimes um, because these planes are mostly passenger planes, passenger transportation is giving priority. So if required, the freight has to wait before, and the cargoes will be given top priority. So this would not be the best option for moving freight. This is probably one of the last option. This figure shows a combi aircraft which is designed to carry both passengers and cargo on the main deck. The advantage of this is the size, the bigger size of the pallets which can be fitted into the plane. This one is an Alaskan airline, and it carries uh, the containers on the front part of the plane and the passengers on the back part of the plane. Now, Airbus, Boeing all have their combis. The Airbus 330, 340, the DC-10, Boeing 737, 747. These are all different combis which are made by Airbuses and Boeing. The next option is the air freighters, which are designed to carry only cargo. Now, in initial days, it was the passenger planes, the body of the passenger planes, which were probably discarded for moving passengers. They were converted into these air freighters. But now, more and more, both Boeing and Airbus are coming up with uh, planes which are meant for moving freight. So that was the sole objective of making those planes. So these some of the variants like the Boeing 777 200. That's one of the variants which is made specifically for air freighter. So these are equipped with rollers so that the loading and the unloading can be much easier. Also, like the loading can be done from two sides or two openings so that the balance of the plane while loading is maintained. Otherwise, the, the equilibrium or stability of the plane while loading is very critical. It might basically do some structural damage to the plane while loading. So that shows the roller which are fitted on the deck of the plane so that the loading becomes easier. And I think you see a container, the TNT container, which is being a Belgian Korean company, courier company. The most of the big top courier companies like the FedEx, UPS, DHL, TNT, they use these air freighters. This is much faster. The loading process is much faster in this place. So air freighters can carry livestock and other fragile cargoes. So not much of explanation for that. Some chartered aircrafts are hired to transport goods that cannot be shipped through traditional air freighters. So maybe because the goods are not of regular size, um, goods are to be delivered at a location where the regular route is not available. Sometimes where the runway is substandard or the cargo handling facilities are poor. So at those locations, the chartered aircrafts are to be used. Slide. The Airbus 300 Beluga is one of the biggest um, air freighter. This is mostly used for carry parts of plane, like which are taken from the different suppliers to the final assembly plant. So this is again a dedicated freighter. This was built to carry uh, freight. Um, there are some Russian freighters. Let me go over to the next slide. So Dreamliner um, is the Boeing version of the Beluga. So this is again the main objective of this plane is to carry the components of plane from the different suppliers to the assembly location. Maria can carry oversized loads and land on shorter runways, giving shippers a lot of flexibility. I think we discussed this. So that this way it can go to a lot of airports where other bigger planes could not land. For international air freight business regulation, there are primarily two bodies, the IATA and the ICAO. The IATA, which stands for the International Air Transport Association. This is primarily an international body which looks into uh, all rules and regulations, safety issues for international air transport. The other body, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is primarily an United States agency. It looks into the international civil aviation practices regarding safety, security, and other operational issues. Now, there are different points which have to be determined as far as safety and security of air freight movement is concerned. They are actually applicable for both passenger and freight movement. Some of them are the it's called the Open Skies Agreement. Uh, it came actually from the the right each of the countries have over its own skies. So, if one country tries to fly over another country's airspace or over another country, it has to get permission from that particular country, and this is based on the Paris Convention of 1919. So this basically talks about what we have just discussed, that international aviation operates under the principle that every country has complete and exclusive sovereignty over its airspace. So to remove some of those restrictions, the Open Skies Agreements were formed, which relaxes those restrictions. Next slide. Freight tariff. Tariff structure on international air cargo is much simpler than that in the ocean cargo. Now, the freight tariff in air cargo is determined by both dimension and weight. It is based on whichever is higher. Like if you have a freight which is of low density and high volume, so in that case, the volume would be converted into the corresponding weight by the ratio what they have for the conversion, and then estimate the tariff. For denser items, it would be the weight of the item which would predominate. So in order to utilize the space, or because there is a restriction of the space, they have introduced this method of taking both the dimension, uh, that's the volume and the weight of the freight into consideration. Environmental issues, like any other modes of transport, environment is now a big issue in, yeah, aviation, which again includes both passenger and air freight. Some of the measures which are taken are use of alternative fuel instead of the traditional jet fuel. The other is the noise pollution. Many airports have stopped those older air freighters to fly maybe in the late hours because of noise pollution and disturbance to the adjoining population. So more and more IATA and ICAO has been involved in this, in the process of using um, more effective planes. They have always been pioneering companies to come up with more fuel efficient planes and using alternative fuels which has less carbon footprint. Next slide. Now, security is again a big issue in this air freight. We all know when we travel through any airport, the increased security measures. But for freight, it is something different. There is the advanced manifest rule, and there is the certified cargo screening process. So it says that all cargo manifest must be sent to the Customs and Border Protection at least 4 hours before the cargo is to arrive in the U.S., so that the border protection, the Customs and the Border Protection people know exactly what they expect from a particular air cargo. The other is the certified cargo screening process. All cargo shipped on passenger aircraft must be 100% inspected prior to being loaded. Inspection can be conducted by certified cargo screening facilities. So in that way, whatever is, because there is a big risk involved with the cargo which is moving with passenger, so it has to be screened 100%. The other concept is the chain of custody. That's a flight which leaves from Europe and comes to America or United States. It has to be first screened in European country, and the screening process over there in Europe and US should be in the same track, or there should be a harmony between these two screening process, so that the level of security is increased.